President Buhari's visit to Jigawa enters second day as he inaugurates key projects of the state government.
At the opening of Commonwealth Conference on Anti-Corruption, Vice President Oshibajo advocates better funding of anti-graft agencies.
Nigeria Police inaugurates Technical Intelligence Unit for Crimes Prevention and Control for Northwest Geopolitical Zone in Kano.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we focus on the reappearance of Ebola in Africa, as well as the exploits of an oil services company in the Niger Delta and elsewhere.
The Ebola scare is back in Africa, Central Africa to be precise. The deadly disease has reportedly killed 21 people in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
That's right, Kyria. Now, according to the World Health Organization, that's the WHO, the outbreak is the 9th in the DRC since, of course, its first outbreak close to what is known as the Ebola River in the year 1976.
Well, these reports have triggered warning bells in all African countries, especially in Nigeria, where the health ministry received directives to set up surveillance at nations' airports and land borders. An emergency operations center is being set up.
Now, the center is to be coordinated by Dr. Babasonya, who is the medical officer that led Nigeria's efforts to Liberia, Guinea, and Sierra Leone in the course of the 2014-2016 outbreak. Nigeria's Minister of Health, Professor Isaac Adewale, also says that part of the strategies to prevent another outbreak in Nigeria would include the screening of passengers from Congo and other African countries, as well as sending Nigerian medical personnel to help build capacity of the DRC's medical team, plus discussions with the Joint Health Sector Workers Union, JOHESO, to end its ongoing industrial action.
Now, these efforts of government are targeted at ensuring that the 2014 outbreak does not reoccur, despite the fact that it was adequately contained.
Now, Kyria, let's refresh our minds a little bit. If you recall, precisely on the 20th of July 2014, a traveler from Liberia, that's Patrick Sawyer, triggered an outbreak of Ebola in Nigeria. His case exposed some 72 persons who had contact with him while he was at the Lagos International Airport, that's Murtala Muhammed Airport in Lagos, as well as at the medical facility where he was admitted. This, of course, prompted an Ebola emergency in Nigeria.
And this index patient died some days later on July 25, 2014. And thereafter, barely 2 months later, there were 19 laboratory-considered cases and a probable one in 2 states with 894 identified contacts.
Now, 11 patients were later discharged after testing negative to the Ebola virus. One person was diagnosed at a critical stage, while 7 others were also confirmed to be positive. Later, some 891 contacts with the victims were investigated, with all testing negative.
Now, let's not forget the deluge of reports in the media and on hand sanitizers, stigmatization of suspected Ebola victims, and very pervasive misconceptions about the disease. But the sigh of relief or celebration of Ebola's exit gradually made many Nigerians across board let down their guard. And now the alarm is sounding again. Ebola is back in the DRC.
The question to ask is, what should Nigerians be doing at this time? And more importantly, how should another outbreak be prevented in Nigeria? And how far have the strategies of government been executed? Where is JOHESO in all of this, since they are the foot soldiers to carry out the surveillance instructions of the government?
And on the second leg of the program this morning, we shall be looking at the giant strides of the oil services company involved in laying oil pipelines in the Niger Delta region of the country and, of course, elsewhere. Now, the name is OilServe.
That's right, Kirian. Now, one of the vital segments of the value chain in the oil and gas industry is the midstream sector. The midstream serves both the upstream and downstream sectors, as seen, for example, in a network of pipelines and related infrastructure.
Now, over the years, Nigeria's oil and gas pipelines deteriorated in quality and integrity. Most of the pipelines are old, resulting in frequent ruptures and loss of product, with the attendant serious pollution of the environment. Vandals have also wreaked untold havoc by busting the pipelines in order to illegally siphon petroleum products.
Now, these factors combined have resulted in the many petroleum product tankers seen at loading bays of tank farms and on the highways, with consequences that are all too familiar. Now, what is the scope of the pipeline projects being undertaken by OSF, and what are the timelines for delivering on the projects?
These and other questions we shall try to provide answers to on this edition of Good Morning Nigeria from the stable of the Nigerian Television Authority, the NTA, Africa's largest television network. I am Kirian Umayo.
And I'm Kingsley Osadola. Of course, it's a pleasure to have you join us again, in the course of which we shall have regular companion segments, newspaper review, business, sports foreign, and others. For now, we are taking the news highlights with our other colleague, Anne Jibuno. Hello, Anne, how are you?
Hello, Kingsley and Kieran. Good morning and welcome to the news. It was a remarkable moment of intense excitement for the people of Jigawa State as President Muhammadu Buhari began a two-day official visit to the area. State House correspondent Adamu Sambo reports on the ecstasy that greeted the president's arrival to the state that prides itself as the new world.
This is a very, very large fertile ground created by the flooded plains of River Hadija. There is more than 25,000 hectares of land here that is suitable for irrigation. I can tell you that we have the funds now to finish this project. We are not going to be waiting for budgetary allocation.
Well, Nigeria is soliciting the collaboration of the Commonwealth countries in its efforts towards assets recovery and repatriation of funds stashed in foreign countries through illicit financial flows. At the 8th Commonwealth Conference on Anti-Corruption, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo drew attention to the need for adequate funding of anti-corruption agencies.
It's important to underscore the fact that opacity in one section of the globe undermines openness in another. We need to break down these walls together. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, African countries must come together to keep the issue of asset recovery and return on the front burner of international discourse. Continuing partnerships and collaboration cannot be overemphasized. I also urge our various governments to embrace the proactive sharing of information. We cannot afford to allow historical suspicions and cynicisms to undermine the very important work of fighting corruption and reversing its impact.
Now, the federal government says it will no longer entertain any flimsy excuse for delay in service delivery by contractors handling its infrastructure projects. The Minister of State 1 for Power, Works and Housing, Mustafa Baba Shehu, gave the warning while on an inspection tour of federal projects under the ministry in the Northeast Zone.
It's a 46-kilometer contract, and they have not done a kilometer yet. It's 46-kilometer contract. And you see how people are suffering on this road. But in some places, it's 12 months a year that is rain and people walk. So it is not an excuse.
An Inspector General of Police, Ibrahim Idris, has inaugurated a technical intelligence unit for crime prevention and control using state-of-the-art facilities in the Northwest Geopolitical Zone. Yahanasu Hassan Barau reports that the center is located in Kano.
We're training our officers. We're going to train them to enhance their capacity to be able to address some of these intelligence challenges we are having in this country.
Most ECOWAS countries are deploying different strategies to combat insecurity and other violent crimes. This came to the fore as members of parliament from West African sub-region presented their situation reports at a session presided over by Deputy Speaker of the Parliament.
However, the President of the Republic's steadfast commitment to the security challenges makes our country a haven of peace, despite attacks and threats by terrorists and drug traffickers.
Maritime security is ensured by the naval forces of the National Army, regularly supported by their French and American counterparts, to provide security for sea users.
Away from security issues, now the national chairman of the All Progressives Congress, John Odige Oyegun, says the successful conduct of the governorship primary election in Ekiti State is the beginning of victory for the party ahead of the July 14th election in the state. Oyegun was speaking while receiving the report of the Ekiti governorship primary election.
The National Secretariat or the National Working Committee can set up an ad hoc committee where they can build peace, understanding, solidarity, and enhance the cohesion of the party to prepare for the task ahead.
Very serious work has already started to consolidate the victory that we scored in Ekiti through the outstanding performance that you put on.
Well, that's the news for now. Good morning, Nigeria. We'll be back with Kirian and Kingsley after the break.
Unemployment, notably youth unemployment, features strongly in our party's manifesto. We intend to attack the problem frontally through revival of agriculture.
The 30K is going a long way. Actually, I bought an acre of land for 60K like 2012, and presently I have a cassava farm and a yam farm.
Reorganized, trained, and fully equipped. We are the new improved Nigeria Police Force. We fight crime. We bust syndicates. Whatever the crime, wherever the hideout, the Nigeria Police Force will get you busted. Stop kidnapping, armed robbery, murder, pipeline vandalism, and other criminal activities. Be productive. Be security conscious. Join the police force to secure your life and property. This message is from the Nigeria Police Force Public Relations Department.
Don't bring Nigeria wire to this. Lie.
Most of us believe in buying anything foreign. We believe that if a product is imported, then it must be better.
The Congo mentality.
Patronize Nigeria, and you will see that Nigeria too can put a smile on your face.
I don't know that Nigeria is doing good thing now.
Many agree and many disagree.
I hope these are not made in Nigeria.
Can made in Nigeria goods put a smile on your face too?
Of course. We're improving the quality of our products.
Find out in Made in Nigeria. This week's episode of a rib-cracking comedy, Professor John Bull, and laugh like never before.
How much is my total?
Your money is 32,000 naira.
32,000 naira for just a pant and a top.
Because it's foreign.
Flash, come and pay now. Flash, Baba.
Over and out.
Brought to you by Glow.
The largest data network. Glow Unlimited. NTA Television College, an affiliate of Ahmadu Bello University Zaria, has over the years maintained her reputation of putting together courses that are highly relevant to manpower needs of the broadcast industry. The college is again organizing a 4-week course on English grammar and pronunciation for broadcasters, slated for 21st May to 15th June 2018. Come and take advantage of our top-notch and intensive course designed to grow the skills of television presenters, script writers, news editors, journalists, hosts of live events in just 4 weeks. Venue, multipurpose complex, NTA Television College, Rayfield, Jos. Fee is 100,000 naira per participant. Accommodation inclusive. Be there. NTA Television College, Jos, training you to be the best you can be.
Give me the value pack. Helen!
You do great value shopping.
Absolutely. I'm a champion at getting value.
Then you must have bought the Harpic 200 ml.
Why Harpic when I have this?
Even after applying them 10 times, they won't give a sparkling clean toilet.
Impossible.
Challenge. Detergent and bleach can't give a sparkling clean toilet even after 10 times. But Harpic 200 ml gives a sparkling clean toilet at one go.
Wow.
Harpic 200 ml. Real deal. Now only 200 naira.
If you just joined us, this is Good Morning Nigeria on the NTA network service. Now let's turn to business. Central Bank sustains liquidity mop-up as 330 billion naira inflow hits interbank. These and more on the business news with Shimaobi Watanaji.
The aggressive liquidity mop-up operations conducted by the Central Bank of Nigeria (CBN) last week is expected to persist this week as inflow of 330 billion naira boosts interbank money market liquidity. As a result of the excess liquidity experienced in the interbank money market last week, which worsened by the inflow of 290 billion naira, the Central Bank embarked on a mop-up exercise to the tune of 454 billion naira by selling secondary market treasury bills. The liquidity mop-up exercise, however, triggered a 6,600 basis points increase in short-term cost of funds. This is according to the FMDQ. Interest rate on collateralized open buy market OBB lending, which shot up by 6,217 basis points to 65% on Friday from 2.83% the previous week. Similarly, interest rate on overnight lending rose by 7,009 basis points to 73.42% on Friday from 3.33% the previous week. This week, the market will receive inflow of 330 billion naira from matured treasury bills, which will more than offset the impact of the outflow of 33.84 billion naira through primary market. In another development, the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation (NNPC) has announced that it has increased the supply of gas to the power sector by 88.89%. According to the oil firm, the increase was recorded between January 2017 and January 2018. The NNPC disclosed this in its monthly financial and operations report for January 2018, which was released in Abuja within the week. The report stated that gas to power supply as of January 2018 stood at 731 million metric standard cubic feet per day, as against 387 million metric standard cubic feet per day in January 2017, representing 88.89% increase. According to the report, an average of 731 million metric standard cubic feet per day of gas was sent to over 20 domestic thermal power plants in the month of January 2018, generating a thermal power output of 3,076 megawatts to the national grid, which represents 76.7% of the total national power generation. The NNPC said an additional 365 MMSCF per day of gas was supplied to the industrial sector to power over 50 companies in the period under review. It stated that the total gas production for the month was put at 8,169 MMSCF per day, out of which 14% was supplied to the domestic market, 43% for export, while 31% was re-injected. And now here is a graphics representation of trading at the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. With business news, I'm Chimobi Walter Naji.
Thank you very much, Chimobi Walter Naji there for the business package. Next for us now, we're having our newspaper review.
And our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Atoyabe, is in the studio. Bayo, good morning and welcome to this edition.
Thank you.
Good morning, Nigeria.
Good morning, Kinsley.
Bayo, good to see you today.
Thank you. Good morning, Nigeria.
Pleasure. All right. Kirian, we'll begin with you.
Yes, we have a number of newspapers here, and I have the Nigerian pilot. What's actually trending in most of the newspapers is Gowon's address to the conference held yesterday. Now, the Nigerian pilot, the major headline actually, Gowon opens up with 3 riders. My pitiable condition after office led past leaders into corruption. I didn't prepare for the future. I had nothing apart from salary when I was overthrown. And if you look at the authority newspaper, it still has the same major headline, I left office with nothing. Says Gowon. And there were 2 others here, as Shoyinka also asked EFCC to build cells for corrupt leaders, and Onogen demands more political will by African leaders in the anti-graft war. Maybe you have a...
Yeah, there's, well, I have a story also as a lead from the Blueprint newspaper. The Blueprint has it with a double-decker headline on one rider. I lived off my staff after 1975 coup, as General Yakubu Gowon. And the writer explains leaders' looting spree. The story is in greater detail on page 6. Well, a related story on the looting is just below the photograph there. It says, we'll use $320 million Abacha loot to support the poor. That's according to President Buhari. For the Punch newspaper, it's a variant of the anti-corruption story from the same event. The Punch has it this way, graft won't end until justice catches up with corrupt leaders. That's according to Nobel laureate Professor Wole Soyinka. Serap Kakol CD back Nobel laureate. Details can be found on page 7. Bayo, let's take this story before we go to others.
Well, the issue of corruption has been a matter of concern for everybody, particularly on the continent of Africa, to the extent that Africa is said to lose most of its resources through its corrupt elite who stack away such resources abroad, in Europe and in the Americas. But meanwhile, General Yakubu Gowon was referring to his modest way of living when he was head of state, so much so that when he left office, he had to be helped by some of his former staff, because at that era, he says, corruption was very alien to the way of life of the elite in government. However, the point to note is that corruption does not pay, and to learn from what he said is that people in office, in political office, when they are taken care of properly, then they will have no cause to resort to helping themselves while they are in the office. But meanwhile, the possible positive development there is that the Chief Justice of Nigeria also stressed the essence for diligent and serious prosecution. You recall that while he was also talking about the judiciary being ready to help in the fight against corruption, he warned that unless cases are prosecuted effectively, there are no draw cases in courts. If you don't prosecute diligently, if you don't investigate properly, and corruption cases are not treated properly, then the judge has no option than to rule in context of the information placed before it. Nobel laureate has also advised the EFCC to expand their cells to deal corrupt persons. Again, this will be a challenge that will be taken up by the human rights groups. They will say that such things should go through the normal process of court so that EFCC does not use that to abuse the right of individuals. But the positive development from there is that President Muhammadu Buhari has identified that 320 million recovered from what has been described as Abacha loot will be used for schemes under the Vulnerable People's Program for this administration.
Bayo, along the same line of this issue of corruption, I thought that there was this suggestion that there should be special courts to try corrupt cases, because of course if you go through the normal procedure as we have it now, a corruption case may last up to 5 to 10 years before it's completely dealt with. So what is the CJN, of course, or the judiciary saying in this connection?
Well, you know, the legislation for administration of justice has precluded the unnecessary prolonging of court cases. And secondly, don't forget that the Chief Justice established a committee that is called Kotrimko. That committee is to monitor and ensure that some of these corrupt cases are diligently handled by the judiciary. Don't forget that the CJN actually directed the Chief Justices in the state to give him a list of the cases before them, and therefore it will help the Kotrimko, the committee, to ensure that the cases are dealt with diligently. It is to eliminate this deliberate slow of prosecution and delaying of justice.
Bayo, I think the Gawan story is worthy of a little bit more of elaboration. Yes. If you recall, General Yakubu Gowon was Nigeria's military head of state from the 1st of August 1966 until the 29th of July 1975.
Yes.
When he was overthrown. Now, one of the reasons, of course, for his overthrow at the time had to do with the fact that he said that the return to civilian rule was no longer realistic for 1976. But there was also the issue of corruption. Not necessarily of himself, but indeed of some other persons in his administration. That's right from the state level up to the federal level. And we saw, of course, what happened with the mass dismissals and retirements after he was overthrown. That also created severe consequences from which the civil service is yet to recover. That's one. Second point to also note about that was the fact that at least 10 of the governors who served under him, had their assets seized by the military government that took over. That's Murtala Obasanjo administration. But a personal example of General Gowon himself is to be noted, because as he observed, he lived off some of his personal staff when he was in Kampala for the OAU summit at the time he was overthrown. Idi Amin was then head of state of Uganda.
Uganda then.
Yes, and he said, "Oh, sorry, brother, I can't help you." And thereafter, he went to England, and then enrolled as a student of political science at the University of Warwick. And one of the photographs that was published in the papers then, I remember that very clearly. We saw him on the queue in a cafeteria. Absolutely.
Queue at the cafeteria.
And thereafter, both the Obasanjo Murtala administration then said no, that they didn't seem particularly dignifying for a former Nigerian head of state. And there are no reports of assets owned by General Gowon. I don't know whether he has an oil block.
No. He doesn't have. All right, let's look at other stories on the newspapers. We have the Authority newspaper above the nameplate to have a World Bank asks federal government to invest more in power and human capital. That's on page 13 for full story. The invasion of Rivers Court unacceptable, says the CJN, that's the Chief Justice of Nigeria. The story is on page 4. Then Nigeria still lacks responsible leaders, says Kaduna Islamic clerics. Page 4 has that story. Then Ugwuanyi, that's the governor of Enugu State, grants scholarship to 340 students. That's on page 11.
All right. Blueprint again, that's where we return. Just below the nameplate, you have a number of headlines there, but let's take 3 of them very quickly before we go to the foot of the front page. That's Blueprint. Chieftains to Buhari, act fast, our party sinking. That's on page 20. Undermining legislature, recipe for anarchy. That's according to Deputy Senate President Ekweremadu, page 5. Nobody can stop me from Senate today, Omo Agege boasts. That's on page 5. And then right at the foot of the front page of the Blueprint newspaper, there's a story there. APC, NPDP cracks. Adamu leads pro-Buhari group. That's on page 6. Bernie Gwari, that's been a bloody area in recent times. Crush bandits. In 3 weeks, Buratai orders troops. And Nigeria diplomat's killer arrested. That took place, of course, in Khartoum, Sudan.
Well, we didn't touch a new telegraph before Bayo comes in now. The major headline on the new telegraph is a patient's groan as workers strike paralyzes hospitals. With the writer, teaching hospitals, medical centers discharge patients. Details is on page 2. Now, just below the photograph, we have fresh plots to invade National Assembly thickens as Omar Agege vows to resume today. 150 Delta youths moved to Abuja for protest. That's on page 3. Now to editorial.
Yeah, just before we take the editorial, just a story from, two stories from the Punch newspaper. One above the nameplate, it says, among the 3 headlines there, will only recognize authorized congresses. That's according to the APC, and details of that story can be found on page 8. An earpiece there, BBOG demands update on rescue as Leah Sharibu clocks 15. Right at the foot of the front page, you can read the story in greater detail on pages 4 and 5. 2 Nigerians batter fellow student over who has the richest dad. That's on page 5. And of course, that took place outside the country. Now, let's to the editorial for today. It's from the Sun newspaper, page 15. Nigeria-China currency swap deal. The title speaks for itself, as we say, res ipsa loquitur.
Yes. Well, let's start with the issues that before we talk on the editorial. Senator Omo Agege says he will be in the Senate to resume at plenary today. Already, the chairman of the Senate Committee on Information, Sabi Abdullahi, says that the Senate will comply with the court's ruling pending the determination of the stay of execution that has been filed. But Senator Omo Agege explained that actually the court took his decision because he had a case in court, yet the Senate went ahead to suspend him. And that was why the court ruled. It was not because of the substance of his case, but rather the indisciplinary power of the Senate in suspending him while he still had a case in court. That was why the court ruled. But talking about court too, the Chief Justice of Nigeria has warned that the judiciary is, if not protected, will go under because of the threats from hoodlums. And he says that does not augur well for democracy. He's referring to the attack on the Port Harcourt High Court that happened over last weekend. The Chief Justice said that one happened in Port Harcourt, and if something is not done about it, no sooner than later, such attacks could come to the Court of Appeal and also to the Supreme Court. You will recall that there was such similar attack in Ado-Ekiti during the early days of the current administration there, where a court was also attacked, so much so that when they had to rule about election petition cases, the Court of Appeal had to go and sit at Ilorin to determine that. Now, talking about the editorial, the Naira...
But just before you take the editorial, very quickly, there was a statement issued by the Senate spokesperson yesterday, that's Senator Sabi Abdullahi, indicating that if Senator Omo Agege shows up at the Senate today, he will be allowed in because it says the Senate would obey the court orders. But noting that the Senate itself has gone on appeal, and that whatever the outcome is, including the application for a stay of execution of the decision by the court of first instance.
Okay. Yes. The Naira Yuan swap deal is positive for Nigeria. It will help because on comparative terms, the Naira to the dollar is about 320 Naira, 360 to the dollar. The Yuan to the Naira is about 27 Naira to the Yuan.
But what will be the end result of this swap? Because I don't believe that China is doing this just to
be shared.
as for that
well,
Christmas.
Every nation acts in the pursuit of its own interests. But the advantage that is there for us is that because China is one of our lead traders, we will be able to buy goods cheaper from China, and it will help our country. But we have to guard against Nigeria serving as a dumping ground for Chinese goods. Secondly, we have to have on the need for the Chinese investors to invest in Nigeria so that raw materials can be processed, what is called outsourcing production to Nigeria. That will help the economy rather than just taking raw materials to China, producing them and bringing them back to us at a very high cost.
That's a very important point to raise. Yeah, yes. but that was also the topic we had in our discussion segment on Good Morning Nigeria yesterday. There are a number of matters arising from the currency swap deal. These are issues that will be considered going forward. So the fuller details, of course, will be released by the CBN in consultation with stakeholders.
There are already reactions.
That's right.
The overtones from U.S. and renewed interest in Nigeria is because they now see that Nigeria has an alternative.
All right. Bayo, I'd like to thank you for being here.
Thank
See
you
tomorrow
for having
midweek.
me as always.
Okay, it's Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We have 2 topics for discussion today. Ebola back in the Central African region, what should be our reaction here in Nigeria. Plus, the oil services company dealing with new pipelines in the Niger Delta and elsewhere in the country.
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
Under no conditions whatsoever should we tolerate or excuse or justify hate speech or hateful conduct of any kind, especially where such is illegal.
There's no doubt that the resurgent push for separatism, as well as the rising cases of ethnic and religious disharmony, are all traceable to the growing phenomenon of hate speech.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
Madam. Brought us as usual.
As usual. You have no problem.
For the three put.
You are welcome, sir.
As usual, yeah.
You take that one. You take that one. You don't understand? We want Nigerian homegrown rice. Finish. You don't have.
Join the rice revolution today.
No other rice that tastes like Nigerian rice. Are you sorry? That's the Nigerian rice we are talking about. Chocolate made in Nigerian rice. Healthy food. I'm going to bring Mrs. Mobo to come to chocolate rice of made in Nigeria here. And see how it are made.
Correct.
And how they are cook it.
Correct.
Homegrown rice are good for your health. It boosts our economy and give employment to our people.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Hear the call of change. Stand up, Nigeria. Change is here and it's going to stay. Change begins with you. Oh yeah, make we go. So let the change begin from within. Look at you, Ogerula. Change begins with you and me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me.
Sit-up Supreme Noodles, capturing the tasty goodness. It's the Sit-up Supreme chicken essence that gives it the truly delicious chicken taste. With real chicken essence. Be Supreme, Nigeria.
All right, now before we introduce our guests for our conversation on the latest outbreak of Ebola in the Congo, let's take this background report by our correspondent, Timothy Yusuf.
The dreaded Ebola virus is back in Africa. This time, it is reported to be killing people in a remote part of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Findings show that the World Health Organization, WHO, has identified the 2018 outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo as the 9th Ebola outbreak in the country since the deadly disease was first identified there near the Ebola River in 1976. The DR Congo's Minister of Health, who declared the outbreak, said 21 people have been identified with the virus and 17 have died as at Tuesday, May 9, 2018. Experts say This report has put many nations, including Nigeria, on red alert, prompting the Federal Executive Council to order surveillance on all entry points of the country to prevent the disease from getting in. Following the government's call to Nigerians to be vigilant, what measures can people take to protect themselves? In other words, how alert should Nigerians be? How can the same rapid response attained during the last outbreak be replicated in the event that the outbreak comes knocking again? This and more are some of the issues on Good Morning Nigeria.
We are now being joined here in Abuja by Chief Executive Officer, Nigerian Center for Disease Control, NCDC, Dr. Chike Ihekwazu. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thanks, Gary. All right. Also here with us in the Abuja studios is Dr. Obin Kingsman. He's a resident and practices medicine in the Congo Democratic Republic, and of course is equally involved in the Nigerians in Diaspora Organization, the African Continent chapter.
And also joining us from our Port Harcourt Network Center is the Provost College of Medicine, University of Africa, to Rural Bayelsa State, and a former Chief Executive Officer, Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, Professor Abdulsalami Nasidi. Thank you for joining us all the way from Bayelsa State. And gentlemen, you're all welcome to this conversation segment of Good Morning Nigeria. It has been established that Ebola has re-emerged where it actually originated in 1976. And the question is, why are we supposed to be scared at this point in time? Let me begin with Ihekwazu.
So, Kieran, thanks for that. I really don't think there's much cause for fear. Like you know, Ebola was first discovered in the Congo, and it's really endemic in that part of Africa, in East and Central Africa. And they've had several outbreaks, like you heard in the show, the short clip. This is their 9th outbreak. They've actually developed a lot of competence in how to manage these outbreaks and have a well-developed infrastructure to respond to these outbreaks. The challenge really is that DRC is a big and vast and difficult country. Several parts of the country are inaccessible, and therefore sometimes it takes quite a while for the information to reach Kinshasa from where response can be mounted. But I think once that has happened, they're well schooled in the different parts of what needs to be done very rapidly. And the final point is, I think the global community, the WHO, and the leadership of the global health community has really learned a lot, and a very strong response has been mounted. So I think Nigerians can rest assured that yes, this is a dangerous disease, but yes, we've also learned a lot in terms of what to do about it.
All right, thank you very much. Let's bring in now Dr. Obin Kingsman, whom, as we said earlier, practices medicine in DRC, that's the Democratic Republic of Congo. Tell us, what do we know about the outbreak so far?
Well, just as the news just started, it's not the first time. It's been an occurrence that keep on coming. Just like Dr. Chikwe said, we have this a history of Ebola in Congo for the past since 1973, and it's as a result of the porosity of the nation and the size. You know, they used to say that Congo can enter Belgium 63 times. So when you see a country of that landmass, I mean, it takes you to fly from Kinshasa to Lubumbashi for like 2 hours, 30 minutes, where somebody who is coming from Kinshasa to Lagos would have landed in Lagos, where you are still flying within the same country. So that tells you how big DRC is. And then the Ebola we are talking about in Bwende province is quite on the northern side. Bwende is towards, you can see the area of Sudan, Chad, and somehow extended to the border to Central African Republic, that is Bangui. So it's quite far from Kinshasa, because you have to live there, come to Mbandaka. Before you live in Mbandaka, normally people go by the ship or boat, as the case may be, because it's not always easy to get a flight coming from Mbandaka to Kinshasa. And most of these people are traders who go on these bush animals, like monkeys and other bush meat. And then it is quite easy to transport those things to Kinshasa, because they are the people, the French language, they say they are doing the ravitaillement. That's they bring the food that the Kinshasa need. And it is also easy to transport the Ebola with the merchandise they are trading on to Kinshasa in a particular market at the side of the river where they offload their items, and then people go and buy. So it's quite easy to say, if not well controlled, through that trade link from Bandaka region to the Kinshasa region, there will be a fast spread to the city.
I think he really will have more to tell us, because you've practiced in DRC. But let's go to Port Harcourt. Professor Abdullahi Nasiri, what will be your take on the re-emergence of Ebola in the DRC? And do we need to entertain any fear down here in Nigeria? You've been the head of NCDC, so you have a lot of experience in handling such matters.
Thank you, Kiran. I just want to say that I absolutely agree with the CEO of the NCDC, my brother, Dr. Chikwe, that no need to panic, but there's need to be worried. Because, what we kept saying when we were having those series of outbreaks in the Congos and the Central African region was we in the West Africa, we thought, oh, Ebola, it's not a problem, it won't come here, and so on and so forth. But when it came with such a devastating effect that that 2014, 2016 outbreak virtually surpassed all the other several 18 outbreaks that had occurred in those parts of Africa. Then secondly, actually, we need to worry that our population is huge. The density of population, especially in the large cities, is so big that we shouldn't allow this virus to take us by surprise, come in and be ahead of us. So it is important that we enhance our state of preparedness and be ready to respond accordingly.
So, Professor Nasidi, thank you very much. Of course, we recall that you were our frequent guests on Good Morning Nigeria when Nigeria had its own outbreak brought in by Patrick Sawyer from Liberia in 2014. We'll come back to you later in the course of this conversation, but there are some points that I would like Dr. Kingsman to further elaborate on. What is, if you have any information on that, the movement, for instance, of Nigerians along the potential travel routes of Ebola in the Congo? Do we have Nigerians who are also going up the river, who are in remote locations?
Well, normally, I can say I stand in the best position.
You have a French accent, by the way.
Yeah, you have to permit me for that. I did my medical training in Congo and practicing in Congo, just like Dr. Chikwe asked me when we were about to come. So it's something I do every day, talking in French.
No problem. So take the question.
The clinical things. So actually, I stand also the position as the Nigerian Diaspora Chairman for Africa to know the movement of Nigerians in the region. Normally, if it is Kinshasa to Lagos, then we have a heavy movement of Nigerians, especially the traders. Because today in Congo, we have a statistic of Nigerians in diaspora of about 7,300 Nigerians living in Congo, and without counting their wives and children. Then these are the Nigerian passport bearers, 7,300. So 80% of them are traders. That is to say, Nigeria do supply Congo with automobile spare parts, construction materials, and cosmetics, and other things. So those traders used to come to Nigeria on weekly basis. When I'm talking on weekly basis, those traders in Kinshasa come into Lagos. But then we have this scanty number of Nigerians in those regions, like in Wende, like in Lubumbashi. We have about 1,200 Nigerians living in Lubumbashi. That's a border with Zambia. And we don't normally have the case of Ebola in those areas because it's in the southern Africa side. And the contact with the Uganda and Rwanda there is a very open world, that side. Unlike this Bwende area we're talking about, it's so much closed with the forest. So many Nigerians are not going there. I can say you can get in Gemina some chunk of Nigerians, about 80 to 100 of them, and those people have nothing to do with Kinshasa. They come from Cameroon. They move to through the border they call Garua border. They move to Cameroon. They get to Nembe, something like that. Cameroon, Central Africa. They cross that river, move into Gemina. They are in northern Congo. So those ones are traders. Some are cattle rearers as well. The northerners from Borno State. They do move to feed their cattle. And they are few in number. Okay, and normally, even they prefer renewing their visas and passports in Nigeria than coming to Kinshasa, because Kinshasa is farther from that area of Gemina. So there is no panic to me, just like the professor said and Dr. Chikwe said. There is no panic, only that we have to be more vigilant, you understand? But to say we have to quarantine Nigerians coming to from Kinshasa to Lagos is good, but not with a lot of skepticism or kind of forcing.
It's a forcing.
So,
otherwise, the first thing will be that we'll quarantine him.
Dr. Kinsman, from your analysis, the Ebola route is actually that Bende region to Kinshasa. You have told us here again that these traders supply bushmeat to Kinshasa. You have also told us that a lot of Nigerians travel on weekly basis to Kinshasa. It takes just one to strike, just like Patrick Sawyer did way back in 2014. I'd like to return to Dr. Ihekwazu. Now, no cause to worry. From his analysis, what's your take?
So I think there are two things to establish. Firstly, this is 4 or 5 days post the finding the case in the Congo. So there's a lot of work going on at the moment to certify the extent of the outbreak, confirm more cases. We still have only 2 confirmed cases as we speak. We have a number of suspected cases. So there's a lot of work happening to really understand the extent of the outbreak, and there are very specific areas of work. Then the next part is to find all of them and do the contact tracing around each of them so that we are sure as much as possible that within the cluster we can identify the people and start monitoring them for 21 days. The third thing to say is, unlike 2-3 years ago, we have a new arsenal, we have a new tool in our arsenal that we did not have in 2014-15. We have a new vaccine for Ebola that was tried in the Republic of Guinea after the last outbreak at the tail ends, which is likely that will be deployed for the first time ever during this outbreak. Approvals have been given. WHO is working through the logistics at the moment. So the strategy, wherever there's an Ebola outbreak, is to contain it where it first emerges as much as possible so that we don't have to deal with the consequences of importations into other countries. And I think that's the biggest lesson out of the West African outbreak. So most of the efforts now are focused at containing it, not even in the DRC, but within that Bikoro area where it was first found. However, at the same time, in Nigeria, what we have done is strengthen our screening our ports of entry. We already have an Ebola working group in the Nigeria Center for Disease Control. And I think as a country, what we really did after the Ebola outbreak is strengthen the Nigeria Center for Disease Control. So 2014-15, we had to set up an ad hoc EOC in Lagos, pulling people from the polio response. Now we actually have a team of people that are working with this. We have a stockpile of response materials, PPEs, whatever we need. So there wouldn't be a situation where we're running around looking for all these things. We're ready if needed, but the strategy, the core strategy at the moment is to contain the outbreak where it is happening in the DRC.
Tell us, who has custody of the vaccines?
So the vaccines was developed by Merck, which is a pharmaceutical company. WHO has a special arrangement with the pharmaceutical company to deploy it in emergency situations. Now, the strategy at the moment is not to give routine vaccination to the whole country or to the whole province. There's something we call ring vaccination. So the population will be identified around where the cluster has been identified, and a ring will be marked depending on the size of the people infected, and we will vaccinate everybody within that specified ring. So that's the strategy for vaccination at the moment. It's not available on the commercial market to purchase. It's an arrangement with Merck to use it under emergency circumstances.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Ihekwe. So let's return to Professor Nasidi at our Port Harcourt Network Studios. Professor Nasidi, again, let's explore the root of Ebola. Why does it always appear to be the case that the outbreak occurs in remote rural areas and not the outbreak occurring in urban centers? I mean, we have seen that repeatedly in Congo, DRC, and then we also saw that when he had the outbreak in Guinea, of course, affecting Liberia and Sierra Leone. So why does it always kick off, as it were, from the rural areas? That's the first leg. The second leg, which is also related, until 2014, we hadn't seen an outbreak in West Africa. But it's a point of curiosity, for instance, because while Dr. Kinsman was speaking, he was talking about the border with Zambia. Why is it that in Southern Africa, there appears, to be no outbreak of Ebola? Neither does there appear to be a preponderance of outbreaks in the Great Lakes region, whether in Burundi or Rwanda or even Congo, Brazzaville itself. How do we understand all of this?
Thank you once again, Kingsley. One of the reasons why Ebola always appears in the rural areas is the issue of mode of transmission, endemicity, and how the disease is actually evolving in this part of the world. So out of the about 18, 19 outbreaks, almost 80%, just like Lassa fever, start in the rural areas, among people who actually handle animals. For instance, for Ebola, it's now speculated and most likely that the bats, fruit-eating bats, are the carriers or reservoirs, and the virus, doesn't actually affect them, so they move freely, and they come near human habitats and share the fruits that our children pursue, and as a result, they could contaminate this virus, as it speculated to have happened in West Africa. Secondly, also, as the doctor from Congo is saying, is in that part of the world, they like eating monkeys, and monkeys are like the amplifiers of this virus in the jungle. If Ebola virus jumps from the species of the bats into the monkey population, it creates a very serious fatality among those monkeys. So, but the monkeys and the baboons, they are huge in size, so the virus has the chance to multiply a lot. And if anybody, comes to hunt on those monkeys, especially those who are handling the monkeys fresh, you can imagine what will happen. Secondly, as I said, in West Africa, because the virus had not been circulating here, the susceptible population to that virus is very high. And, if such a virus is introduced into such a population that has never experienced the virus, the impact will be too serious. And that's what we experience in West Africa. Then secondly, we are more urbanized in the West African region than some of these East and Southern African countries. So the virus quickly jumped when it appeared in Guinea from the Gekedo village, to the urban cities, to Conakry, to Monrovia, and Freetown. So if now the virus moves from a limited rural area where the transmission is mostly from animal to human. If it goes into an urban area where you have large population and they are susceptible to the virus, what will happen is like you are pouring petrol into fire. It will just be amplified. The transmission from human to human will just be so high, and it is like a war. What happened in those three countries? Like when I was talking in Lagos Kano Economic Summit, I was telling them that the best way to ease business is to ensure that those who are doing business are healthy. So if you have the cities of the countries that are most economically important, like Lagos, Port Harcourt, Kano, and all this thing, you introduce this virus there, it's a big problem. I also mentioned that these three countries, it's very interesting to note that both Liberia, Guinea, and Sierra Leone experienced long-term civil wars, human displacements, and lots of poverty. So when the virus came, it was like a dry grass with fire and petrol. So you can imagine what is happening. Then lastly, the West African region is even a little bit more advanced in terms of availability of health facilities. And so the contact between the patients and the healthcare worker is faster in this region. And again, healthcare workers, are amplifiers of this virus. Of course, if they come into contact with it, as I'm talking to you now, this outbreak has already affected 3 health workers, and one of them is dead. So you can imagine. Similarly, this is what happened with our Lassa outbreak recently. So the health workers are like amplifiers. So the area affected in Congo is so remote and poor that the only way the WHO and the Ministry of Health of Congo could respond is to create an air bridge, where you have mobile ambulance, mobile laboratory, mobile everything. The area doesn't even have telephone network. They don't have electricity. No, the nearest healthcare facility is about 18 kilometers. So definitely, you could see that, if it happened in such areas, then it will be possible to, if you go early, to nip it in the bud there. But if it happens in West Africa, where population movement is bigger, the population is bigger, and we don't have experience with the virus, you can imagine how terrible the situation could be.
Professor Nasidi, thank you very much. Let's bring in again Dr. Kingsman. Dr. Kingsman, what's your take on this in terms of the question I asked Professor Nasidi? Why does the outbreak always occur in remote rural areas and not in the cities? And then from what you try to describe in terms of movement, why is it that Congo-Brazzaville, because we have 2 Congos, there's Congo-Brazzaville and then Democratic Republic of Congo, which was formerly governed by Mobutu Sese Seko until he was ousted in 1997. And then in the Great Lakes region, why is it that we are not also having these outbreaks in the other plus Southern Africa?
Okay, thank you. It still boils down to the movement and the demography. You see, I remember in the course of my clinical consultations in the General Hospital in Kinshasa, whenever there's an outbreak in Angola, the same day we have the percussion, we have the feeling in Kinshasa. Because before you will see 5 to 6 patients, one of them might have been contacted from the Angola carrier. Because there is a frequent movement between Kinshasa and Rwanda. I can say an average Congolese man see Angola as the easiest place to go because of the diamond mining and other things that is more happening in Angolan side. Unlike Brazzaville, that is more strict in their diplomatic approach with Congo DRC. The 2 countries are brothers, but they don't so much relate. Very close, but the relationship is quite a bit fairer to that of Angola. So you see, it's still boiling down to the contact of people, the easy contact of people. And when you see the vast size of Congo, it is difficult for somebody to leave Kinshasa and go to Bukavu, very close to Uganda, because it's like paying a flight ticket of going to Europe. So, and it is also difficult for somebody to live in that place going to Zambia as well. So, and there's no train that is frequently connecting Kinshasa to those areas. So it's either by flight, and the roads you cannot talk about because there's no link of Kinshasa to the eastern side of Congo by road. So it is only in Kinshasa that you can see the outbreak. We come sporadically, because I remember whenever there is such an issue in the northern Congo, I hardly see it coming to Kinshasa, because the movement is still limited. Unlike Angola, that is always on daily basis, people cross over.
Yes, you see, this is a virus that moves with the carrier from place to place. And that was how Nigeria got it through Patrick Sawyer. Ours did not originate from the rural area. It started from the city center. Right, you've told us about the movement of Nigerians who operate between Nigeria and Kinshasa, who are 80% traders, as you pointed out. Now, the causative agent of this DRC Congo virus is said to be the most lethal of the Ebola family. Now, is there any sensitization going on in DRC for Nigerians who operate in that axis to ensure that this Ebola is not imported into Nigeria? Is there any such, since, of course, you are the chairman of Nigerians in diaspora in Africa?
Yes, of course. We have instituted our usual hygienic measure and travel restrictment. We have issued it last Monday. Immediately we got this news. And we made it compulsory that no Nigeria, we have contact with the Northern Congo. And that's what we do, because even marriages, we celebrate marriages in weekends.
What of the Nigerians living in Northern Congo? Are there no Nigerians living there?
Yeah, that's what I'm about to say. Marriages, we do contact in Congo within ourselves and the citizens there. We've stopped it for the past 1 week. There's no social ceremony between Nigerians that we take them from one place to another. So we are like restricted to Kinshasa. And as Dr. Chukwe said, the World Health Organization is working hard to making sure that the outbreak did not touch Kinshasa. And right now, I can assure you that no Nigeria is going to bring this Ebola to Nigeria.
All right, Dr. Kingsman, thank you very much. Just to indicate that there are viewers who have sent in their tweets using our Twitter handle at NTAGMN. We take those tweets now and then we continue with the conversation. Festus Akimboyawa, again one of our regulars, has this tweet. The threat of Ebola spreading to Nigeria, again, is terrifying. Although Ebola is frightening and deadly, it's good we now have the experience of containing it. We also now know that the virus can only be transmitted by direct contact with blood and other body fluids of infected persons. Government must urgently roll out our enhanced screening for Ebola at all our airports and borders.
And from Omo Bolaho, Babs, he says, it's a sad news to hear the resurgence of the deadly disease. However, first thing first, government and all relevant stakeholders must find a compromise to ensure the health workers who are on strike go back to work. It's particularly germane because entrants from outside Nigeria, apart from a very serious surveillance in our various airports, the various borders across the country must equally be monitored as people come in, particularly African migrants, coming through these porous borders. And we all know DRC is a country in Africa. We must be watchful.
Adebayo Adeiga has this tweet. Government should increase sensitization on the effects of Ebola in our schools, markets, and also strengthen controls at the borders.
All right, now Thomas Mbangon, he says Nigeria and DR Congo friendly match should be suspended, no matter the speculations the health workers claim they are taking. Nigeria should employ the same approach and even more than she employed last time the emergence broke out.
Dele Jack Solomon, now we must begin screening international arrivals for Ebola symptoms at our airports and seaports and set up surveillance systems by mobilizing networks of community health workers and stop human activities and encroachment into the forest ecosystem spurred by increasing population and poverty. All we need to do now is to be alert. Thank God our government and emergency operations centers have the knowledge and experience of tackling this highly infectious disease. We should work towards improving the response times in coordinating, tracking, and monitoring.
All right, now this one is coming from NCDC, of course, from one of our guests. Ebola is endemic in the DRC and has recorded about 9 different outbreaks. However, there is no cause for alarm as we are better prepared.
All right, this is from Japan, Godwin. It says NCDC, that's Center for Disease Control, should endeavor to do everything possible to prevent Ebola from entering Nigeria again. The last time we experienced it was 2014, and it killed some Nigerians, including a female doctor. What are the proactive measures put in place by the NCDC to prevent Ebola?
All right, from Aminu Haliru, says the Nigerian Immigration Service need to do more. It needs more effort in checking foreigners coming into the country.
All right, now those are the tweets that we have from our viewers. In the meantime, let's bring in again Dr. Chikwe. So Dr. Chikwe, while we're talking about the response mechanisms, you say, of course, we're saying it's once bitten, twice shy. This is at the NCDC. What do we know about the subnational governments and local governments in terms of readiness? I know you can deploy at any time, but what is their state of readiness?
Yeah, so this is really at the heart of our work at the moment. Interesting you asked that question. Just yesterday at the FCT, we were launching a new emergency operations center for the Federal Capital Territory as a state. And we're doing the same thing for all states in Nigeria. We just came back from Zamfara State, where we helped them equip and develop one and put it together. So really the front lines of the work that we do is in the states. And our primary responsibility in NCDC is to support the states develop their own capacity to detect early and respond. So we're doing this around 4 key strategies at the moment. I'll run through them very quickly. Develop emergency operations centers in every state capital. Ensure that every state capital has at least one treatment/isolation center where we can treat patients not only of Lassa, Ebola, but of Lassa and other highly infectious diseases. We're rolling out a new web-based surveillance infrastructure. Previously, we used paper and Excel to send cases around the country, but we have a new web-based system where we can centrally monitor everything that is going on. And the 4th part, which is the most critical, is our laboratory infrastructure, setting up a series of zonal labs around the country. So a lot of the work over the first year of my tenure at NCDC has been strengthening the center. The second year now is about strengthening the states to have themselves the capacity to respond.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ihekwazi. You are battle ready if anything happens. That's what we have learned from what you told us.
Okay, no one is ever completely ready. But I think we're readier than we've ever been before. Professor Nasidi was the first executive director, really started up the Nigeria Center for Disease Control. What we have done is taken over the baton, built on the strong foundation he's laid, and we continue to build. But I wouldn't ever say we're completely ready.
All right,
we'll do our very best.
Okay, thank you. Let's return to Professor Nasidi. Professor Nasidi, I'd like you to speak to the fact that some of Nigerians who actually sent messages through tweets talking about porous borders, which has been a major problem in this country. Now, you were effective when the last outbreak of Ebola took place in Nigeria. Now, what would be your advice, to the stakeholders or the relevant authorities with respect to this porous border issue?
Well, thank you very much. The most important is for us to know that, the preparedness and response to any outbreak, especially these highly pathogenic ones, must be multi-sectoral. What we did in 2014 that, many countries came to learn is how we came together, particularly I must, praise the role played by the media, Ministry of Information, Ministry of Communication, Ministry of Transport, and then the Immigration, in really making our response highly effective. So let me say that to get it really effective and done properly, the ministers, of health, information and communication, all those that, and transport that will have something to do with the movement of people with information and, training of upgrading the knowledge of people should start coming together. NCDC is the most important tool we needed to really be in position. So they are the front soldiers that are there ready. And we have also within the NCDC a program called the Nigerian Field Epidemiological Laboratory Program. They are ready. But we shouldn't forget that the other sectors, if they don't really get mobilized and work together and coordinate. So I think our response to the possible attack by this virus should start immediately by putting together again or bringing together that committee of ministers, at that level that will start empowering all the agencies that monitor the borders, monitor the healthcare centers, monitor anywhere you have a large population. It's also crucial, to say that the virus, we are talking of the movement of the virus, that Nigerians moving in there or moving out there and so on and so forth. Now the viruses have developed wings. They fly across borders. And, they could come through the airports, they could come through semi-border or any border in the north or the east and so on and so forth. But the key, and that we shouldn't forget that even the dead bodies, this is a terrible contagious disease that the dead bodies, transmit the virus even more efficiently than, the living body. So movement of the dead bodies should also be monitored. And what did we do in 2014 to get all this put together? Believe me, Kieran and Kinsley, if we don't have the president of the nation fully mobilized to support us and give directives to all these other sectors to rise to the challenge, you might be very surprised. We start, NCDC might be doing its part, and so then one part will be failing and it won't work. In fact, the role of the media and the National Orientation Agency was so great. But all this happened, and our coordination was so effective because the president, the then president, gave a directive, and then declared state of emergency and directed all those ministers to make sure that this doesn't come into Nigeria. So the NCDC needs to be empowered, by all this multi-sectoral team to make sure that what they are doing is effective. So it's not just a health issue, it's the issue of all the sectors that matter. And then it is also very important to note that there's a WHO checklist that you use to assess the state of readiness of a country or a state. I think the Federal Minister of Health, the NCDC, should use that checklist to immediately start checking the readiness of any state, because Ebola came into Nigeria through Lagos. Lagos is developed. The governor did so well that time, Fashola, and the same thing when it came to Port Harcourt. The then governor here, Amechi, they rose to the occasion. What if it comes through the rural areas, where we might not even know? In fact, let me just say that the current outbreak is a challenge because even though the Ministry of Health of Congo reported the outbreak on the 5th or 7th of May, but what we are getting now on ground is that the outbreak had been spreading maybe most likely since January. So again, we have a large period of this thing that the virus is circulating within that area. And as the doctor from Congo was mentioning, I'm sorry, my compatriot from Congo is saying, is that it might have spread wider. Then lastly, in terms of monitoring the disease, I don't know if you're aware that there are these big Russian planes, the Anton 4, also they are so huge that they've been facilitating trade in between countries. They jump from Kinshasa to Kano to Lagos to any. So these are the ones that we should be monitoring, but we should also take note. The WHO has not issued any travel restrictions. So you can't restrict anybody from traveling. You just have to enhance your surveillance, enhance your readiness to be able to isolate and treat, and then also to your ability to inform the public so that everybody is aware, everybody knows what to do. Thank you.
Professor Nasidi, thank you very much. Gentlemen, we'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll get the closing comments of our guests.
The Nigerian Television Authority News 24 channel, your dependable all-round news station, offering you world-class news programs, documentaries, spotlights, promos, and information highlights. Take advantage of our network reach and advertise your interest, goods, and services with us. NTA News 24, first among equals with digital broadcasting. You can reach us on Channel 21 terrestrial TV and Channel 101 on the StarTimes platform. For more inquiries, please call Coretta 0803 618 9986 or Henry on 0803 379 0884. Join us today.
All right, you're welcome back. Now let's bring it again, Dr. Chikwe Ihekwazu, CEO of NCDC. In terms of surveillance, is the NCDC directly involved, or is it because earlier we're talking about JOHESU, that is the Joint Health Workers Union, who are currently on strike? How does the current industrial action by JOHESU impact, for instance, the rollout of effective surveillance, say, at the ports?
So once we don't have the complete array of our healthcare workers working, we are not working in an optimal situation. There will be gaps. What we're trying to do at the moment now from NCDC and other government agencies, try and make sure those gaps don't have a significant impact on our surveillance activities, make sure that critical services continue. So the surveillance, our port health workers are working. That's not affected in all our points of entry at the airports. So if you go to Abuja, Lagos, and all the others, you will see them working. However, like Professor Nasidi said, when this virus was first detected in Guinea 3 years ago, it came up suddenly in an area where no one had suspected it would come up. And that's the critical gap in knowledge we have of the Ebola virus, that we still are not 100% sure of what the natural reservoir is. It's thought to be a bat, but we're not sure, 100% sure about this, the way we know about the mastomyces rat for Lassa, for instance. So the fact is that although it's not common in West Africa, it did appear out of nowhere, and there's nothing to say that it may not appear again. So while we make sure the primary risk we face is through the ports, we also have to pay attention for the unlikely but possible transmission from an unknown host into a human somewhere in West Africa, just like it happened in Guinea. And therefore, we really need all our healthcare workers in all primary healthcare centers and all hospitals to always have the sense of duty of working for Nigerians.
Thank you. And we'll now return to Dr. Kinsman. What is the capacity of the Congolese authority with respect to handling the current resurgence of this Ebola disease? Are they also battle ready, as Dr. Ihekwazu said, that Nigeria is battle ready because we have vaccines, we have other facilities, that we could deploy in case it breaks out in Nigeria. Do they have such?
Yeah, of course. DRC Congo government is quite ready for this epidemic, because normally this is something that occurs from time to time, and they have a long history of this, making them, I think, the people who are always ready, they know that this thing comes from time to time. And they are also in a serious contact with the World Health Organization in the area of the vaccine, because you remember when the vaccine was developed, it was designated to the restricted area that are already infected. And as of now, we have about, yesterday, it's about 480 staffs of WHO that were sent to the antenna areas for the purpose of the disease control. So in the government side, because there is a structure in the Congo Ministry of Health, the reporting of this epidemic, because if there is a problem in this report, I may say I have to verify, because normally there's what we call the region of Santé. It is segmented, from the sectors to the territory, from territory to the province, province to the national body. So you see, every time there is such, even in that Bwende area, there is somebody, the zonal director of that region de santé, who will always give the report. And this report doesn't take time to come to Kinshasa. And immediately it's in Kinshasa, the government takes position in order to return back with positive response. So I can say in the real sense, on the side of Congo, they are always very much ready for this because it's not the first time it's happening. Even in the general hospital in Kinshasa, I remember whenever there is such, there is always a strong mobilization of health workers, just as it is going on now, for the purpose of this, the current epidemic. So they are very much ready, and with what Nigerian side are doing, I think there is no cause for alarm.
All right, Dr. Kingsman, thank you very much. Let's take very quickly now our next set of tweets. Dele Jack Solomon, a dense population and overburdened infrastructure create the environment where this disease can easily be transmitted and sustained. Now, let our environmental agencies start dismantling unhygienic slums, and patients who have refused to respond to malaria treatments should be reported.
All right, now from Mike Anyakwo, it is very unfortunate to hear the resurgence of Ebola in Africa. The governments of various countries in Africa should do the needful to stamp out Ebola. Our health organizations and other foreign bodies should come to our rescue immediately before the situation gets worse.
And Joseph Ode Omang tweets, now how do we expect to stand Ebola when generally in Africa we have poor medical orientation? And it is high time African leaders began providing adequate medical attention to our people, both in the rural and urban areas.
Well, essentially, you keep the NCDC. A lot of work has been done to certify the extent of the outbreak with enhanced surveillance and setting up of an Ebola technical working group. A new strategy is the use of an Ebola vaccine tested successfully in the last Ebola outbreak in Guinea.
Dele Jack Solomon has this tweet. It says, continental governance of health systems needs to be improved. The Ebola epidemic and the response of the African community demonstrate that there is need to revisit the global health crisis and security management system, as well as the protocols for dealing with pandemics at this level. The initial slow reaction of African governments other than Nigeria indicates the absence of leadership and lack of clarity of roles and responsibilities between technical, funding, and implementing agencies, both at the national and international levels.
All right. And as we about to round off this segment of our conversation on the program, we'd like to return to Professor Nasiri. Please, your final thoughts on this matter.
Thank you once again, Kieran. I think my final thought is we shouldn't forget that the key is how to empower Africa to do it itself, and that's why we rush to establish the NCDC. And I'm happy to even mention that Congo itself is now requesting that they would like to have their own NCDC. Then secondly, I keep saying that the beginning of the fight actually starts with the president. And I hope, the president will be made to know that the best way to keep Nigerians safe is to actually help other African countries that are weak, like now Congo, to nip this epidemic in the bud. We have large volume of volunteers who went to help Sierra Leone, Guinea, and Liberia. These people can quickly be mobilized. We have large volume of infiltrated people who have been trained. And according to the WHO estimate, about $18 million is required now to quickly put the response mechanisms on ground. And so far, only about $5 million have been raised. I wish to seize this opportunity to once again appeal to Mr. President of Nigeria, the giant of Africa, to help Congo with some funds and the manpower. And they should do it quickly, because all these other so-called donors that come to help us to control our disease, they're not doing it because they love us so much. They're doing it because they want to keep the disease here. They are protecting their people there. Thank you very much.
All right, that's Professor Abdul Salami Nasidi, former CEO of Nigeria Center for Disease Control and current Provost, College of Medicine, University of Africa, Toru Orua in Bayelsa State. You joined us from our Port Harcourt Network studios. Thanks a lot always for being part of Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you.
Appreciate Dr. Obin Kingsman. He's a Nigerian who is resident and practicing medicine in DRC, Congo. That's the Democratic Republic of Congo. Dr. Kingsman, thank you very much for being part of Good Morning Nigeria.
Yeah, thank you. And if I may add that NIDO, the Nigerian Diaspora Organization, with NCDC, we will try to have a proper coordination whereby Nigerians over there, we know what to do and do it before coming to Nigeria.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And then also the current CEO of Nigeria Center for Disease Control, Dr. Chikwe Hekwazu. Pleasure to have you with us on the program this morning.
Thank you. Always great to be on your show.
All right. It's Good Morning Nigeria still. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be dealing with oil pipelines and what's happening.
Nigerians. Suicide bombers are not spirits. They are not ghosts. They are human beings like you and me. They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria, unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, you're welcome back. Now, the federal government, through the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, has been taking measures to address the petroleum pipelines challenges of the country. The intervention is through the overhaul of existing pipelines as well as construction of new pipeline infrastructure.
And one indigenous company that is involved in laying new pipelines is OilServe. And here with us this morning to talk about the role of OilServe in revamping the petroleum midstream sector is the company's founder and group CEO, Engineer Emeka Okwosa. Engineer Okwosa, you're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much.
And I would like to first of all get to know about the scope of the pipeline projects being undertaken by OilServe in Nigeria at the moment.
Thank you very much for the introduction. OilServe Limited is a company that was established in 1995, and we've been in operation, and is the primary, the very premier oil and gas EPC company. And when you talk about the projects we've executed, you can imagine from 1995 till date, we've done more than 500 kilometers of pipeline, new ones, apart from the ones that we maintain. But most currently, I will mention just two key projects. One is a set of projects involving the supply of gas to 6 power plants under the IPP and NNPC system. And I can mention quite a few of them. Ihobo Power Plant in Edo State, Baram Power Plant in Bayelsa, Ebema Power Plant in River State, Calabar Power Plant in Cross River, as well as Aloji Power Plant in Abia State. Another major project that OilServe executed is 128 kilometers of pipeline from Okanafon, which is on the western flank of Akwa Ibom, all the way to Unisem cement plant, which is on the eastern part of Cross River. It's a major project. And when we talk of EPC, we're talking of engineering, procurement, and construction, which is a full gamut of the entire value chain.
Now, what is the guarantee of the quality of job being done in those projects?
The quality is fully guaranteed. All that is done is based on international standards, ASME standards, and oil and gas is self-regulatory because we have standards, and these standards are not about a particular country, it's international standards. The owners of the project, like the clients, like the likes of Shell, the IOCs, like NNPC and other owners have to keep to these standards, and oil staff, by the same token, keep to those standards.
All right. Now, in the period that OSF has been in existence, we have seen the introduction of the Nigerian Content Act, also known as the Local Content Act. To what extent has the Act impacted on the operations of OSF and vice versa?
Let me say this, that the National Content Act is quite a major step in the direction of development of Nigeria in general, apart from development of capacity in oil and gas industry. So the establishment of the Act has encouraged across board capacity development. And capacity development is not about just infrastructure, but human capacity development. For oil serve, we've been involved from the beginning. You may wish to know that oil serve belongs to Petroleum Technology Association of Nigeria, PETAN, that helped to champion the establishment of the Act. And we've been at the forefront of making sure that this is moved from stage to stage. Where we are today, I can say that the National Content Act, which is managed by the NCDMB, has done very well. Very well in capacity building, very well in development of the country, very well in actually trying to have Nigerians grow in oil and gas industry. OSA being a premier company in this and being one of the companies that actually pushed for this, we have in many ways helped to build capacity. Quite a few companies have spun out of oil serve as a result.
Well, some of the slides that we have seen while you are giving your explanation will show the laying of pipelines. In terms of procurement, it was always an issue that we were having steel pipes being imported into the country. That's why I asked the question, in terms of impact, what are your sources, for instance, of the materials? Look at those pipelines that we are seeing on the screen right now. Do we have enough indigenous suppliers of the materials you need for your projects?
Let me make this quite clear. When we talk about the procurement, yes, over time, the quantum of materials that fall into this scope of procurement has, as far as sourcing from Nigeria is concerned, has gradually improved. The establishment of the Act has also encouraged this to happen. But when you talk specifically of the pipes, let us understand also that these pipes are made from steel coils. Steel coils are manufactured only by very few countries. They are not manufactured in Nigeria. So one thing that has been done is that there are processes now being taken to establish steel mills. These steel mills, pipe mills in Nigeria, will utilize the coils that are purchased overseas. We have no choice. But you may wish to know that OISAV is in the process of establishing its own pipe mill in Nigeria. And that's part of this development of national content. One or two companies are already working towards establishing theirs. So National Content Act has encouraged us to move in this direction, knowing fully well that when you have a pipe mill in Nigeria and you can produce these pipes in Nigeria, you establish a lot of opportunity for job creation.
Now, in the context of the National Content Act, how much of Nigerians are involved, directly involved in the practical aspect of implementing the project with respect to, for instance, the engineers, the welders, well, if you like, artisans, who may be involved in some units or segments of the project?
To answer your question, actually, a very important question, I use OISAB as an example. OISAB employs from 400 people to 800, depending on the number of projects that we have. And I can tell you that 100% of all our staff is Nigerian. 100%. The same applies to a lot of Nigerian companies playing in this field. What is going on now is when you talk of 100%, you're talking from the basic worker in terms of activity all the way to the most advanced technical people, welders, fitters, engineers, project managers, maintenance engineers, 100% Nigeria in some cases.
Tell us something. What is unique about OSF as an oil services company, quite aside from the 100% local capacity that you've just talked about?
What is unique and sets us apart, you may wish to know that historically, a lot of times it's difficult to find a company that is established in 1995, still building capacity and growing. There are many challenges, including understanding that it's about contracting. If you don't have projects, you cannot grow. So ability to have projects and keep doing well and being able to create value. But let me tell you the uniqueness of OilServe. OilServe has established, as we speak, 2 training systems. We believe specifically in human capacity development. We train people at the low level of technical issues. I'll give you an example. We have a technical training program called TTP, and the technical training program trains operators, welders, fitters, and all manners of technical people. We also have graduate training program, which is very unique. This program, what we do is that we go into the various universities in Nigeria and pick individuals that are graduating. When they go through the youth service, we now make them pass through a 1-year training program. Within that period, they go through the entire value chain of the oil industry. And when they graduate, we now put them to work, and they have the right capacity to work. So this has helped us to churn out people that have capacity.
Well, you're talking about, I'm a Korean, I find this very interesting. I mean, it's talking about going to universities to recruit, potential staff, which is what used to happen in the 70s and the 80s. Lately, we've been hearing complaints by some persons, oh, Nigerian graduates are not employable and so on and so forth. But the training adjunct that you have introduced, it seems to be very useful. But let's return to the issue of pipelines, which is what we've been seeing on the screen. For many years, of course, Nigerians have seen how the pipeline network in the country has deteriorated. How much work is still out there, for instance, with regard to overhauling our pipelines and then laying new pipelines for the supply of various products?
A lot of work has been going on, and I give a lot of credit to NNPC. NNPC, I'm sure in the past few weeks, you will have heard Dr. Maikanti Barrow, who is the Group Managing Director, who has done a lot of good work in developing a lot within NNPC in the past couple of years, as far as gas development is concerned. What has happened, NNPC has already told us that in the past few years, total of 600 kilometers of pipeline has been built. You may wish to know that OilServe has been the one that built almost half of this. Now, a lot also is going on in terms of rehabilitation of existing pipelines, whether it's gas, product, or crude oil. I know clearly that in the past 3 years, again, the same story. I'll give you an example. Atlas Cove to Mosimi pipeline, which is a major pipeline for moving products, and being able to free the Lagos area of tankers has been rehabilitated to a large extent. Of course, it requires a complete revamp and then replacement, because we need to move the pipeline out of built-up areas. When it was earlier conceived and built, people were not living there. Today, it's sitting on areas where people live. So these are a few examples I can give you, but a lot has been done by NNPC, and I can tell you also that other entities like the IOCs, they have a program, of course, of rehabilitating pipelines, maintaining them, and keeping them going.
And I want to ask you this particular question. You were at the recent offshore technology conference, OTC, in Houston, Texas, and indeed the pattern panel. Now, which one of the highlights of the Nigerian delegation participation at the OTC has been consistently sponsored by OilServe? What is in there for you?
Thank you very much. You may wish to know that OTC is the largest forum for oil and gas industry to showcase what is done and what they do. And OilServe has participated for more than 10 years, and we have also sponsored, like you said clearly, under Pattern, sponsored the panel session. The panel session this year discussed gas flare monetization, commercialization, the opportunities and challenges. You may wish to know that panel session within the OTC program presents the most important aspect of our participation in OTC. That is a forum where you have Nigeria present what is done in Nigeria, and then have interactive session where anybody from the world can come, ask questions, and get to know what goes on. And we take, every year we do a different program as far as topic is concerned. But that of this year was able to highlight what Nigeria is doing to reduce flared gas.
All right, at this point, I'd like to thank you for sharing your thoughts and, of course, your insight on this particular conversation segment. We've been talking with the founder and group CEO, Engineer Emeka Ukwosa of Oil Serve Nigeria. Thank you once again for coming on the program.
Thank you very much.
And you are still watching Good Morning Nigeria. Next is sports.
Super Eagles coach Gernot Rohr has named a 30-man preliminary squad for the 2018